Alright everybody, what's up? How is it going? Make sure I got all the settings on here right. Hopefully you should be able to hear me. Let's see. Check this out. We're going to be talking about... Sorry, I'm still getting the hang of streaming. There's a lot of weird settings involved with this if you've never done it. Is it going? Sounds like weird echoes happening. Audio. Yeah, let's remove that. Yeah. Okay. If you guys can hear me, if it sounds alright, please do let me know. If there's not, if the audio works, if there's not some sort of strange echo. Sorry. Should be working for now. But yeah, do comment, do let me know, and I'm going to jump right into this. Today we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff, actually. It's kind of a lot of things I've had on my mind, and kind of a lot of things I've thought about in terms of how to get over initial mental hurdles, how to create a funnel, if you will, or a power funnel. Let's go ahead and get this canvas over here. Boom. Cool. Got this. Here you still a little bit of echo. That is very weird. I wonder what the echo is about. Should only be one audio source. Audio input capture, video capture device. How does if I remove this? Does that work? Seems like it's recording from two audio sources. Let's see if this works. I wonder what the echo is about. Should only be one audio source. Audio input capture, video capture device. Anybody's ever streamed before, you know there's a lot of weird features. I also just got a new webcam, so that's why it's up here now instead of down here. There we go. I think I fixed it. Okay. I think I fixed it. Sounds good. Let me know if that fixed it or not. All right. So I kind of want to jump into this. Let me see if we can all see everything properly. Yeah. Let's see this canvas. Yay. Cool. All right. Today we're going to talk about a few different kinds of important points in the interaction, right? We're going to talk about 3 seconds. We're going to talk about 30 seconds. We're going to talk about 5 minutes. And we're going to talk about 1 hour. And this is actually going to be split into 1 hour or 3 hours. All right. Yeah, hours. This is minutes, and these are both seconds. Okay, and this is kind of how I think of the approach, how I break it all down, how I chunk it into different pieces to know what I need to be doing at what point in the interaction, right? And for a lot of you guys, this is going to be completely new because I've never fully actually explained this for the most part. This is mostly talking about street approaches, right? So we have one track here, and this other track as well is kind of like a separate thing. All right, we'll get into that later. All right. Now the point of this all is that there's a funnel, right? So you can imagine as you go down this, it's like fewer and fewer people make it to the next stage, right? Right, so it's kind of like that. It's obviously front-loaded heavily, so you have like the biggest volume here, smaller volume here, smaller volume here, smaller volume, all the way down the line. Pretty, I mean, simple, basic stuff. Move this around so I can kind of get more of the screen in there. Yeah, pretty basic stuff, straightforward. This obviously is the, so this is where you see the female, see the human being, right? and you want to go in. And most of this stuff is mental, but there's a lot of kind of physical things as well that go into it, right? So in the first 3 seconds, of course, you have to take control of your mind. There's going to be a lot of bullshit going through your mind, obviously. You know, she's too far away, she's too old, she might not be cute, she's on her way to work, she's, you know, doing something else, whatever it might be. There's a lot of shit that could happen in your mind here that might prevent you from doing it. So the biggest thing is feet moving first. So feet moving before your feet move. Feet move before mind thinks, right? Wow, that didn't work. Still getting the hang of this software. So first thing is feet gotta move. This font is awful. Okay, let's do something like this. Feet have to move first. And as you're moving, that's kind of weird too. Feet move, and then as you're moving, like mind for info, there's a lot of things you can tell about the girl from the back, which is usually what you're going to have to, or, you know, as you're walking up. I like to have absolutely almost no thoughts in my mind as I'm going up to them. Basically, almost like a Zen, like a walking meditation, right? Don't really have any specific openers I'm thinking of, anything, because as long as my mind is occupied about something other than the girl in front of me, that's going to cause problems, right? So after my feet are moving, I'm mining for info. I'm looking at them. What sort of information are they giving me, right? What can I tell about their pace, their gait, how they're walking, right? Where they're looking. Are they walking slowly? Are they looking up, like sort of like a tourist, like excited? Are they looking down, right? What essentially is their general mood? What is there any sort of fashion or anything on their person that might stick out? You know, do they have Doc Martens or Converse or something sort of, which would be signaling, you know, maybe potential interest in English, or do they have stuff like, you know, heels, pink heels, black heels, whatever, red bottom heels, or if they're wearing flats? Can I see any nails? Can I see eyelashes? Can I see any sort of recognizable brands that I know? Any sort of information at all that you can get on the way in? Is there any English lettering on their bags? Do they have any danglies hanging off of their bags? Any sort of, you know, are they holding their phone? Are they texting? Does the phone have a phone case? If it does, what kind of case is it? You know, what can I learn from their case? You know, do they have the bag like an American Apparel bag, or is it like a paper bag that, you know, you might use to you know, it's like a reused paper bag kind of thing. Which one is it, essentially, right? Because that's all that's going to tell me is essentially like what I need to know about the girl, or what I can mine from the girl to begin with, right? I'm just going to open this and make sure I'm getting the chat as well. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of information you can mine from them as you're catching up to them, right? So don't waste this time. But ways you would waste this time would be thinking about other stuff, right? Feet move. Oh, I can edit this. Before mind thinks. Right? Feet move first. So the most important part here, the key part here is desire, right? Oh man, it's really hard to write with a mouse. Desire. Bending. So desire is the most important thing. That's what channels everything. A lot of people ask me, I get a lot of questions like, hey, what are some signs that this girl might be open? Do you wait for eyes? Do you wait for eye contact before approaching? You know, or how do you choose which girls to go after? And for me, it's 100% about desire and also curiosity, right? Because if there's no desire, right? What the hell? That's not right. Let's try a pen. That's also not right. It's like weirdly curving. You see that, right? I'm not crazy. Yeah, so if there's no curiosity, Rather, if there's no desire, then there's no point in approaching, right? And at the same point, yeah, okay, like let's say she's giving you all the IOIs in the world. She's looking at you, she's smiling, she's like basically begging you to approach her. But if there's no desire, then what's the point, right? The point ultimately is that you have the desire for that girl, right? And that could be very, very mild, right? Could range all the way from curiosity all the way to just straight up lust, right? But curiosity and desire, these are kind of the bare bones, what you need to feel before going in, before making the approach, right? You do have to feel desire for the girl, and no, it doesn't have to be based on any sort of IOI, right? You get a lot of guys who feel like, it's weird if I approach her, if she doesn't look at me first or something, right? Ideally, you want to get this out of your head because it's not important. You want to make sure that fundamentally you're having integrity to yourself, you're having the ability to act based solely on your desires, solely on your interests, right? Because you're going to find out all the rest later. And when you find out the rest later, then it will come across more genuine because you weren't going in with, like, the worst kind of mindset you can go in with on the approach is, how can I make this work? Like, how can I fundamentally get this girl into my bed, right? That's like basically the worst mindset you could have when going in. Like, why is that? Well, because if you think like that, you're going to think very functionally. If you think in terms of, like, executing moves on a controller to move your character, like in a fight game, right? Like AABA, Hadoken, right? And you're going to think very functionally. You're going to start to think of girls as objects to fulfill, whatever purpose that you might have, right? You're trying to think of, like, how do I get this girl to come back to my bed? That's like 100%. You've already decided the outcome you want, right? And that's, if you've already done that, you're lost, essentially. You can't have decided the outcome that you want before you even open your mouth and talk to her, right? So when I say desire here, what I mean is desire and curiosity, right? Is that, yes, your approach should be predicated on your interest in her as a human being, right? It doesn't have to be sexual from the beginning. Ideally, of course, there's some sort of spark or interest there romantically, but if you can get yourself in the mood of just socially talking to as many people as possible, that's obviously going to help as well. So the curiosity, what does the curiosity come in? Curiosity essentially is, what about this human being, what makes them tick? What can I, like, find out about them, right? What can I discover about this person? What sort of adventure can I have in the next 30 seconds, 5 minutes with this kind of human, right? What can I find out about them? What's quirky about them? What's different? What's interesting, right? So that's the impetus. That's what gets you moving, and it's not because she's giving you signs, as I mentioned, right? You can't wait for IOIs. If you do, you will be a very sad and lonely man in Japan, right? Unless you look stunning in some sort of way, and I don't know what that way would be, right? Feet move before the mind thinks, mind for info as you're going for the approach. Again, these 3 seconds are basically as you're catching up to the girl, right? So outpace, of course, you want to outpace them. It's going to just default to this horrible font. That's fine. Outpace and then parallelism. So outpace them and maintain parallelism. So what this essentially means is to go. God, this is really actually annoying. It's all good. This is walking alongside of them. Most of the time you're going to walk alongside of them. You're going to have to do this because, especially if you're approaching in busy places, just because people are not going to stop. If you try to stop them head on, yes, some might, and yes, you can actually kind of get good at this. And it's not to say you should never do this, but by and large, walking alongside of someone is going to be the way that your bread is buttered. It's going to be the way that you get pretty much most of the good reactions. And why is that? Well, essentially, the girl, she doesn't know if you're worth giving her attention to, right? So if you walk alongside of her, if you try to stop her head on, she has to make a very quick decision: am I going to give this person time or not? And the impulse to just start walking again is going to be there, right? Whereas if she continues walking, she can kind of soak in more, she can listen more to what you're saying, you have more of a chance, right? And one of the keys here about this 30-second thing is you want to get to the 30-second mark. You essentially want to buy her attention, just a little bit of attention, right? And I want to contrast this with what most guys are doing, right? Let me see if I can make a new window. Let's do it this way. So what most guys are doing is they're leading with their best foot forward. Essentially, they're leading with something. They're leading with what they think is their best foot. So they're gonna show like some high value thing, right? Like, hey, I'm a DJ, or I have a car, or what, like, look at my watch, or look at whatever. And then from there, as the interaction goes on, their whack ass social skills are gonna drop this, right? They're gonna drop the rest of it. So you lose the girl over time, right? And if you talk to girls, you hear this all the time from them. You hear them like saying, oh, male models are the worst. They're boring as fuck, right? They like so that's the epitome of this. Or like rich dudes, like at the beginning it's great, but then I see all the good stuff at the beginning, and then after that it's nothing but bad, like bullshit. It's almost like if you have a book and you get to see like the first chapter is amazingly written and you're like, yes, this is going to be a great book, and then everything after just sucks, right? Or a movie, the trailer's awesome and everything just in reality it just isn't well done, right? Now instead of just being normal all the way through is actually not a bad idea, right? But really what you want to do is you want to backload it, right? You want to go like this, right? And what this means essentially, let's see if I can do this in a different color so that it looks a little bit better, or clearer, I guess you could say. We'll do red. So essentially what you want to do is you want to start low, right? And I guess what you could call this, you could map this onto pickup terms like DHV right here, demonstrating higher value, right? And this could be something like DLV, right? If we want to map this onto old school type pickup terms, like demonstrating lower value, right? And the reason why you want to come in low and end high is this has a lot more staying power. Number one, this is a shock, right? If you come in and you're like, what's up, girl? I'm just trying to buy some toenail clippers, right? If you come in with some really normal shit, right? She's gonna be like, what? Like, this guy's not trying to impress me, right? And that immediately makes you stand out from all of the other guys who are doing this, right? And she knows, because everybody's kind of, for the most part, trying to look as good as they can in front of her, right? And her being the beautiful girl that you're approaching, right? Now, if you take this opposite approach, you come in and you're like, sup, I was just doing my laundry, what are you up to, right? This is like the opposite. She's like, what is this guy? He's not putting on airs, he's not pretending to be someone he's not. He's just coming in as a normal dude, right? And this middle line, of course, will be normal, right? And over time, you increase this. So over time, you selectively drop in, like, you have good social skills, you have solid fundamentals, good eye contact, all this stuff, and the better parts of you come out later in the interaction. And what this does is this keeps the sustain of your interaction going up and up and up, so that she wants to come out, so maybe this is the first interaction here, and then this is the date here, and she wants to come out, and she wants to keep coming out more and more, because she keeps finding out better things about you, right? Now, what does this mean? What this means is if they're giving you incredible positive responses, right? And I kind of call this like the Justin Bieber effect, right? In other words, let's say this is her perceived value of you, right? If you come in and she's like, oh my god, you're so cool and amazing and awesome, right? Most guys are like, yeah, like, this is great, this is going well, this is awesome, this is in the bag, right? What I'm thinking is, I'm like, shit, I gotta pull this down here and make her think of me as normal, right? Calm her down a bit, and then we can go back up, right? Because if we just stay up here, it's gonna follow this pattern again. She's gonna be like, wow, super cool. I don't know if you've ever had girls like say like, oh my god, you're so handsome, whatever, or you're so cool, you're so fun to talk to. Most of the time, weirdly enough, and I only find this in Japan, weirdly enough, it drops off pretty hard, like a rock after that, right? So the degree to which they compliment you, they are super excited to talk to you or whatever, usually often has a pretty hard drop off, right? Because no one can ever maintain those expectations. And this is kind of why I call it the Justin Bieber effect, because if you imagine like all the fangirls at a Justin Bieber concert, right? All these little 14-year-old girls that all get all hyped up to go see Justin Bieber, and they're like, oh my god, he's so cute or whatever, right? And they go and fill the stands and look and cheer and everything. But what would happen if he actually like said, okay, no, you can come backstage, right? Yeah, they'd just be like completely starstruck, completely like I don't actually know what to do, right? And if he was like, look, I want to date you, they'd be like, and just like faint or something. They wouldn't be able to process it fully, right? Because he's on this other level, right? And if you're on this other level, right, and this will happen the more and better game you get, is essentially girls will start to doubt themselves. They'll start to disqualify themselves because they're like, there's no way this guy's going to be into me, right? And some ways they might do that. They might say, oh, you have a lot of girls, right? It's not the only meaning of that expression, but it definitely is one, right? So they think essentially that you are beyond them, you're out of their league, right? So what I'm trying to do immediately in the interaction is I'm trying to come in lower, right? I'm trying to come in somewhere between normal and like really normal, or like mundane, right? I don't want to really dip into like self-deprecation or anything like that. And you don't need to go that far, but just not being afraid to show kind of the mundane aspect of yourself, right? Okay. So this is kind of like how the energy, the sort of the value charts over time. You want to, right? There's the line in Bedrock. You want to let her see the Aston and let the rest surprise her, right? So that's kind of what it is, right? Obviously, an Aston is still a massive THV, but the point is that you want to come in low. You want to come in unassuming. You want to come in simple, humble, straightforward, right? Not pretending to be something you're not hiding something, right? Not putting on airs, just straightforward. And then over time, all these little things, it's almost as if they slip out, they sneak out, right? Whether that is you have a cool job, whether that is you've traveled a lot of places, whether that is, you know, you're friends with X so-and-so famous person, or whatever it might be, right? If you have these things, which your first instinct might be to tell a girl right off the bat, let them sneak out almost as if they like you by accident, like you slipped up and told her that actually you're famous or something, right? Let it sneak out, and it's going to have a much bigger effect later down the line. All right, so that's kind of like the value, the way value charts over time. And what I'm kind of trying to do with value is I'm trying to come in on this red line, come in low here, and end up high, right? So back to our 3 seconds, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, 1 hour kind of chart that we're going to look at today, and the funnel along the way. And I should mention also that at each step of this funnel, there's people exiting, right? And by people exiting, I mean girls, you know, rejecting you at every stage, right? Or rejecting you. You could also turn them down too, right? They could not qualify as well. But let's be real. Most of the time, it's the girl being like, no, I'm daijobu, bye-bye, I have a boyfriend, whatever. She makes her exit for some reason, right? So we're going to talk about ways to kind of mitigate some of these kind of losses, right? And to make it more about yourself, make it more about the ones that, you know, what you're interested in, mitigate some of the holes in this funnel, right? If you think of a lot of water coming in here, right? Water or whatever, right? Water, I guess in this, you know, in this case, it's obviously girls, right? But if you think about it why isn't this not? If you think of this in terms of water that doesn't change color, Phil. Okay, whatever, I'm done. If you think of this in terms of, you know, in terms of water, in terms of whatever coming in, there's going to be leakage. It's like a leaky garden hose, right? At each stage, there's pores, there's holes that people are going to get out, right? And you can think of these as like, well, maybe, you know, at the beginning, if it's 3 seconds, maybe you kind of eject that girl from your pipeline yourself, right? So you see a girl, mentally, you think, yeah, for the first second you see her, you know you should approach. Like, let's be real, there's plenty of girls that we all know we should approach, and we don't end up getting around to it, right? So maybe something in your mind is causing you to remove her from your funnel, right? And it's probably not for your best interest. There's a lot of cases in which it's not for your best interest. You might think she's walking quickly, she's probably busy, and you don't do anything, right? In reality, you should have gone in, right? Or you think, you know, she doesn't really, I don't know if she's cute, I didn't see her face, right? Well, just go in. An approach is cheap, right? That's another kind of important point about this first 3 second thing. Approach is cheap. Oh, now it's blue. Oh, I see what happened. I see what happened. Wow, that looks really weird. Okay, so approach is cheap. It looks very weird. Approach is cheap is not a marriage proposal, right? It's not a marriage proposal. A lot of guys go into an approach being like, I can't approach her, I don't really like her, right? Again, it's not a marriage proposal. So, you know, you don't have, you're not signing up to marry her. You shouldn't even really have the idea that, you know, you're guaranteed to really like her, right? You don't really know ultimately if you're going to like her, right? All you know is what she looks like, right? Approach is cheap, it's not marriage, right? Man, if I could get these fonts, this is like destroying the designer in me. Yeah, so I mean, it's not marriage. A lot of guys think like this. They're like, I can't approach, blah blah. Like, you know, I don't know if I like her. She's you know, she's XYZ. Don't worry about it too much. Mind for info: outpace her, seen before heard, and parallelism. Important, very important one that I just added here: seen before heard. You do have to be seen before heard, right? And what that means is just sort of if you're coming from the back to outpace her, she sees you out of the corner of her eye, and then you're heard, right? And maintaining parallelism, we talked about that already. The approach is cheap. Make more approaches because it's not a finite cost, right? You're not losing something, right? Herimonjanai, right? Show up in here. Oh, this doesn't support Japanese. That's a shame. Herimonjanai, it's not a finite resource, right? Your finite resource is time. So if you spend 1 hour on the street and you talk to one girl, that's the same as if you spend 1 hour on the street and you talk to 15 girls, right? The same amount of time, right? The only difference is you're capitalizing on your time, and the other you're not. The exception, of course, is if you feel like you're suffering intense ego, long-lasting ego pain, right? Short-lasting ego pain, sure, but for the most part, you get over it. You get past it, right? I really want to fix these. I wish I could. Okay, yeah, all right. We're gonna. That's good. Right. So in this 3 seconds, desire and curiosity is the ultimate driver. You're gonna do all these things, and you gotta also understand how you're coming across, and how you're coming across is important, obviously, especially in this first 3 seconds, because in this 3 second phase, the only person that's rejecting you is you, right? Because, you know, this is basically catching up to the girl, right? She hasn't even seen you for the most part up until this, right? In this next phase, 30 seconds, she's seen you, right? She's seen you. So what are the important things here, right? So this kind of relates, seen before heard. You do have to have that eye contact, right? Oh, it's still in Japanese. So the initial eye contact, very important. When she looks over, you have to be there. You have to be there, present for her to see, to look back at her, right? Motive by negation. So, kind of going along with this, going along with the fact, sort of what we've talked about already up until this point, motive by negation. It is important to that you don't give up all of your power right away, right? Now, what does this mean? It's one of the reasons I don't do direct, and I also don't do indirect, right? The reason for that is that both of these essentially assume that you need to explain why you're talking to the girl. All right. If you're indirect, you say, look, you know, I need to find the Starbucks, or I need to find the train station. You know, do you know where it is, right? What you're telling her is you're saying, the reason that I'm talking to you is because I'm lost, right? Or I'm looking for something, or I need help with something, whatever. If you go direct, you say, hey, you know, I thought you were really cute, I wanted to talk to you. What you're saying is you need to explain the reason you're talking to her, right? And the reason, of course, is that you're romantically interested in her. What's the problem with direct? Well, direct, essentially what it is you're placing a wager. You're betting that your ballsiness is going to outweigh the fact that she does not know you at all, right? In other words, she has basically about 10 seconds. Direct is like, you know, between 5 to 10 seconds, right? 5 to 10 seconds, you're wagering your 5 to 10 second impression on her is going to be more powerful than, whatever she has to do, whatever her current mindset is, right? If she's kind of upset or bummed out, you're fighting against a lot of factors based on only a 5 to 10 second impression. Now, on the plus side, yeah, okay, you're being ballsy, right? It's ballsy, right? Which is great. If you can be ballsy, it's powerful. So there is something there, and it's usually packaged with a compliment. If you're going direct, it's a little bit of a compliment, which is good, and it's mostly good for girls who are not 8, 9s, and 10s, essentially, right? For those, it's going to work a lot less, right? Going in with a compliment from the beginning. Okay, so going direct, you're wagering your initial interaction, you're wagering everything, you're all in on this 5 to 10 second impression of yourself. And if she's not into that, she's going to be like, oh, sorry, I'm not interested, right? And immediately basically shut you down. Okay, so the rejection, the end of the interaction, you're basically forcing her decision very, very early. Now, I don't like doing that. There's a few reasons I don't like doing that, but the main one is that I want about 30 seconds, right? I want to buy 30 seconds, and how I do this is with this. I do this with the motive by negation, right? And essentially that means is that she has a checklist she goes through. He's not a scout, he's not a tourist, he's not some religious kind of person that wants me to join his church or whatever, right? And there's all sorts of people that talk to you on the street. He's not, some izakaya guy, right? So in her mind, she's going through this motive by negation, and she figures out, oh, okay, no, he's just a normal guy, right? And then, usually, by the time she figures that out, it's about 30 seconds in. And that 30 seconds, I've been able to communicate a fair bit, right? So usually it will consist of 3 parts. Often some sort of observation, simple observation, right? Followed by your past agenda and her future. And her future agenda, right? So this is the first observation itself is also present tense. So this is sort of like a spiral. Present, past, future, like this, right? And you're covering all the bases. You're covering all the bases. You're also talking about you and her, right? It's a little kind of whirlwind, if you will, a little hurricane of content, right? And the advantage, of course, being that it's stimulating, it's complex, it's also extremely easy. Anybody can do all 3 of these things at any point without any thought, right? Which is important when you're going to do this, when you move your feet before your mind thinks, because you always have this structure. You always have this 3-part structure which you can fall back on, which is always going to be good enough to open her, and is always going to get across kind of the most important things that you need to get across and start this process of the motive by negation, right? So very, very simple observation, right? 1 is the observation. Oh, I see you have black shoes, right? Retarded, stupid level observation. Anybody can tell the color of her shoes, right? And important thing here is not a compliment. Why is it not a compliment? Because it's not direct game, because you don't want her to shut you out after 10 seconds. You want to get to 30 seconds so she has a little more time to calm down, because if from her mind, right, her nervousness essentially is peak at this point, right? So her nervousness still doesn't go. So her nervousness is going to be maxed out essentially, right? At the beginning, right? At this 5 to 10 second phase, you're presumably a foreigner, you're big and scary, she's a little Japanese girl running about her day, you stop her in her tracks, her heart rate is gonna spike no matter what, right? Doubly so if you're a little bit scary looking or intimidating, right? Doubly so, right? So her heart rate is going to be high, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does often trigger essentially fight or flight response. So that is biggest at this 5 to 10 second mark. So that's why you need to get to 30 seconds, right? Before you force a decision point from her, which is either accept the interaction or not, right? Okay, so observation, anybody can tell the color of her shoes, anybody can tell, that sort of thing, right? It takes basically no brain power. You can be a complete moron and look down at her shoes and observe the color of her shoes, right? Now, obviously, we're talking about a scaffolding. We're talking about a base, fundamental, low point, lowest common denominator, minimum viable product upon which you can then improvise, right? This goes back to the whole ultimate mindset, is that you want to be ultimately calm like a lake, right? Your mind should be peaceful and tranquil so that when you go up to her, right, there's nothing obstructing your mind, your thought process. All that is in your mind is, who is this person in front of me? That curiosity and the desire. I want to know what makes them tick. I want to know what I can find about them. What pieces of gold are they hiding, right, underneath all of the inert matter, right? Okay, so you have this Zen, essentially a Zen calmness, a Zen lack of thought in your mind. This is the ultimate ideal, essentially, right? Now, it might be difficult, obviously. It's nervousness and everything. You can't help but think, what am I going to say, right? But hopefully, if you always know you can fall back on this, it's not a problem, right? You always have something to say. So one observation, stupidest, simplest observation, it's the color of their shoes. That's it. Now from there, of course, if you've noticed something better, it's pretty easy to step that up a notch, right? You can be like, oh, your hair is purple today, right? Or, whatever, right? Again, not that hard to observe something about her. 2 is your agenda, right? What are you doing? Now notice this is past agenda. What were you doing, right? And this can be anything, right? And it doesn't have to be glamorous. Again, going back to this starting low thing, right? So I very often sort of say something like, yeah, like I was just XYZ. I was just buying toenail clippers. I was just, watering my plants at home, right? Whatever it might be. Does this work? I can't change the color for some reason. I don't know why, but that's fine. Past agenda, past tense, right? Past tense is important. Then her future agenda, also known as, I guess you could call it her logistics, right? What is she doing at this moment, right? You want to know how much time you have. You want to know, do I have, 30 seconds before her boyfriend shows up, or do I have, 15 minutes, or do I have 5 hours, right? And that's important also because you do have to be able to essentially notice. You have to know, are you playing for the date or are you playing for the SNL? And that's what this final branch is going to be about. Just to kind of spoil alert it, right? This path over here is going to SNL, right? Same night lay, right? And this path over here is going to date, which people call D2, right? So you have to understand which is the final path you're going to get to, right? And that's why you need to figure out what she's up to, right? Because that's really the most important piece of information. Is she free for some, enough time for this? Does she have 1 hour, essentially? Does she have an hour in which, you can take her somewhere, take her to a bar, head back to your place, take her to a net cafe, take her to karaoke, and get down and dirty there, right? Does she have about an hour, ideally more like 2, to be honest, but at least an hour is essentially what you're looking for, or no, right? And she'll give you whatever she's up to most of the time. And this is, again, social reciprocity, right? You tell her first, I was just looking for some, I just got some toenail clippers, right? Again, keeping it low, keeping it stupid. What about you? What are you up to, right? She, because that's the real information you want to find out, right? And most of the time they're going to say, I'm meeting a friend, or I am going shopping, or I have school, have work, right? And based on their answer, they're varying degrees of, like solid, right? Their plans are varying degrees of solid, right? If they're saying, yeah, I'm going to work, okay, sure. If they're saying, I'm going to meet a friend, is that solid? Might not be, right? A lot of times they're lying, right? That's fine. Just realize that, you do have to ask this, and you do want to know, and at the same time, you don't place too much faith on it, especially if it sounds like a shaky plan. Okay, so this is the 3 kind of 3 points of the what the hell? Okay, these are kind of the 3. That looks really weird. Oh, now it's red. Now it's red. Man, this thing is buggy, whatever this is. Okay, well, this is gonna be real. This is gonna be a nightmare kind of design here. That's okay though. Okay, well, now we're doing red. We're doing red, I guess. Fuck it, we'll do it live. We'll do it red. Cool. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3. Observation past. Observation past your agenda. Future her agenda. Right. So those are the 3 kind of parts to this very, very simple initial. I guess you could call it a routine, or these are the main pieces of information you need to communicate, right? And the motive by negation thing, right? Not a scout, right? Not a tourist, right? You know, not lost, right? Not religious, whatever it might be, right? She finds out, she's in her mind, she's going through this checklist. If you're saying, oh, I just got some nail clippers, she's like, wait, that's not what a scout would say. That's not what a tourist would say. That's not what, like, a lost person would say. And that's not what a religious person would say. And he must just be a normal guy, right? And you want her to come to this conclusion through negation, right? Because it buys you that 30 seconds. Whereas if you went direct, you say, hey, you know, this is why I'm talking to you. You know, you're cute. Then, you know, she's going to be like, no, sorry. A lot of the time, right? Oh, I'm not interested, right? Or, you know, if you go indirect, then later you have to bait and switch. You have to switch the topic. You have to be like, hey, you know, where's the Starbucks? And then, actually, by the way, I have a penis, right? It's kind of like a weird transition, right? So again, just this is how we get to this 30-second mark, while still eliminating a lot of these kind of holes in the funnel, right? There's still obviously going to be lots of girls who are falling out, right? Maybe you know, maybe you didn't overcome her first. Maybe you approached slightly from the back and she heard you and she's spooked, right? Well, she's going to leave the funnel, right? You missed your chance. Maybe you didn't stick in long enough. Maybe you weren't persistent enough. Well, she's going to leave the funnel, right? But ideally, using these 3 things, you can get to essentially the 30-second mark, right? And the 30-second mark, what the assumption here is that, look, you are going to have a better impression. She's going to have a better response to you if you can be there a little bit longer. Time is your ally, essentially, right? So in the interaction, you don't want to have her force the decision too quickly, like this, as in the direct game, because you want her to soak in your presence, right? And the whole time you're doing this, you're of course focusing on eye contact, focusing on presence, focusing on speaking hypnotically, speaking slowly, speaking in a compelling manner, right? And that gets you to essentially the 30-second mark, right? Now, 5 minutes. This is kind of the standard length, the base length for a street interaction, mostly specifically having to do with just getting the line, basically. Why does this not change? It's driving me crazy, man, this program. This color, please. No? Okay. We're red. That's cool. So, it takes about 5 minutes. Could be more, could be less, until you get to the point where, yeah, she might be happy to give you her line. Could come sooner, again, could take longer, but the main reason you think that I put this marker at the 5-minute mark is because you don't want to be standing there for 45 minutes on the street, right? You don't want to do it. It's not helping you. It's not going to solidify anything. You're just most likely having you don't want to push things forward because you're afraid of losing the girl. You like the smiles and the positive responses she's giving you. It feels good. It's releasing dopamine in your brain, and therefore you'd like to just continue it for forever and talk to her forever and never actually hook up with her, right? This is a very real kind of phenomenon. Okay, so by ingraining this in your mind that, yeah, about 5 minutes is all you need. On the one hand, you know that you don't need to just extend the conversation for forever with no aim, right? And on the other hand, you know that that's about the amount of time by which you should make this decision. Is she on the S&L track or is she on the date track, right? So, what are we doing in these 5 minutes, right? Well, I mean, essentially we're vibing. We might cut deep a little bit, right? For those of you guys who are familiar with the, see my light here gave out. For those of you guys who are familiar with the cutting deeper versus vibing duo dynamic, right? Vibing, of course, being light, energetic, fun, fluffy, and cutting deeper essentially being kind of more serious, core values, right? Based. Most of the interaction is going to be on the vibing side of things, right? And then it might dip a little bit to cutting deeper before you get the line, right? And of course, as you meet her, when you meet her, she might be somewhere where you have to kind of get her, right? In other words, if she's down here, you might have to kind of pull her up a bit. Or if she's way up here, you might have to pull her down a bit, right? You want to suck her into your vibe, essentially, right? And the one kind of dip here, I want to talk about this as well. This little cutting deeper point. You want to add the humanity, right? Part of the reason that what we're trying to accomplish here is trying to get from essentially Gaijin Blob, which is over here. When she first sees you, she's going to notice a vague Gaijin foreign presence, right? It's going to be sort of a non-specific, right, foreigner in my proximity, right? And that essentially, she's not going to take you too seriously, right? So you do have to kind of go from Gaijin Blob to human. Let's do another one. Right. So, can I change the color on this one? Oh, it works on this one. Huh. Okay. So you do start out like most Japanese guys have the advantage of starting out as human, right? Human. Here. And we're gonna start out here down below, unfortunately, as Gaijin Blobs, right? So we start down here. This is our impression, right? Over time. Eventually, the first step is achieved when we get to humanity, and then later on, our goal is to become seen as a potential mate, right? Potential mate. Japanese dudes luckily get to start out as humans, so they don't have quite as much work to ground to catch up as we do, right? And this term Gaijin Blob, it's kind of started out as a joke, but it actually is pretty real, right? They do sort of see us as kind of amorphous, strange aliens, right? Almost as like, you know, some foreign, strange creature has engaged with me. He probably likes anime and is an English teacher or something, right? Or is a tourist from Germany or whatever it might be, right? So they have these basically what this means is they have a very amorphous stereotype of you, and that stereotype is not helping you get to, you know, potential mate status, right? So we want to achieve humanity first. The first step is achieving humanity, right? Getting them to see you as just, oh, this guy's normal, right? So it's another reason for the agenda, saying, oh, I'm going to get toe clippers. It's another reason for, you know, oh, I was just hanging out with my friends, getting coffee, right? Sounds simple, sounds stupid, but saying something as simple as, you know, I'm tired from work today, right, goes a long way in achieving that humanity. She turns from, this guy's a weird foreigner in my proximity, and then, you know, now she's like, oh, you know, actually, this guy's just a normal human, right? I thought it was a weird foreign blob, but actually, he's not so different from my Japanese guy friends, right? And that's kind of the first goal, right? First milestone, as it were. The second milestone being potential mate, right? She has to start to see you as someone who she might potentially even date, right? Which is kind of crazy if you started off as a blob, right? So that's kind of the progression, right? And you have to get to here before the 5-minute mark, right? So the struggle is, this is where you start out as. You got to work up first humanity, then potential mate, right? Cool. And to achieve that, yeah, vibing is great. Having light, fluffy conversation is great. You do have to have that one dip, though, for sure, right? You do have to establish your humanity, a little bit more than maybe what you did during your agenda over here by saying, I just put out my laundry today and it just came out. What are you up to, right? Something very, very basic and humble and simple. That might have achieved some humanity, but you also have to add some more in, right? But it's cutting deeper. And without going into too much detail, I will make some videos about that later. Or, this is written extensively in the book. A lot of this stuff is written in more detail in the book itself. So if you're not clear on any points, do make sure to check out the book, book.attractionjapan.com. But for now, basically cutting deeper essentially is a value, talking about values, right? So what do you spend your time on? What do you spend your money on? What do you value? What do you care about, right? What do you not care about? It's fine too. And a little bit about her, right? And what you can think of as, if she goes away, right? Let's say you exchange lines. She's sitting on the train home. She's looking through her phone. She's like, who was that guy that I talked to for a couple minutes there? Like, can she actually say anything definitive about you? Does she actually have any way of understanding you? Does she have any way of thinking of you as at least a human and hopefully a potential mate, right? And it doesn't take all that much, right? It doesn't really take all that much. But, like, hey, she's thinking of you at least as someone who eats, who has hopes and fears, who works, who does laundry, right? Who does all the kind of normal things a person would do, right? And again, it sounds stupid, it sounds like something you might not need to do, but that humanity is real. And you could also do this basically if you're, like you're talking, how do I put this? You can do this essentially through somewhat of interview style questions, right? Basically, all the sort of common cocktail party questions people talk about, all the things, the first questions she might start to answer. If she's hooked, which at some point in the 5 minutes she will be hooked, usually around the 30-second mark at least, she's going to start to open, and maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes she gets hooked. She might start to ask you this stuff, right? So, where are you from? How old are you? What's your job? All these kind of initial questions they ask you. And it can help to take those initial questions they ask you and kind of package it into a story, right? Package it into a story so that it's more interesting, right? So if you know that, hey, look, I always get asked, where are you from, right? How can I make this more interesting? How can I package this in a way that I can make it relatable, I can add that human element, right? While still giving her the information she wants, right? So, let's say you're from Germany, right? Or, I'm from the US. You can say, well, it's people really work hard in Japan, but it's really clean, and in the US there's litter everywhere, people drop stuff everywhere, so it's quite a different contrast of cultures, right? Something simple like that could convey, number one, where you're from, right? Number two, a little bit about your values, right? Or a little bit about the differences, right? So it's like packaging that information into a little nugget or a little savory package of juicy genetic material. Well, that comes later, I guess. But right, so the point is you do want to have a lower dip in your conversation to make it serious, make it more a little calm, right? You can't be like la la rah 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 all the way to the end and then expect her to feel something, right? She's gonna essentially feel like, okay, that guy was just white bread. He was empty calories, right? I can't, and then she's not gonna text you again, So if you just like bounce high, like blah blah blah, funny, life is good, let's hang out, she's gonna go home and she's gonna be like, that was just, there was no nutrition in that meal, right? He was just like an empty calorie human being, right? There's nothing I can accomplish, nothing to be had there, right? So she does need to have that positive, high, light, fluffy, not super sensical conversation, and also the sort of the negative, and negative I don't mean bad, but in terms of energetic, lower, more serious, more human style of interaction as well, before she gets to that decision point. All right, and here at the decision point, by now you figured out how much time apparently she seems to have, right? And you've given her a little taste of the experience of you. So now hopefully you should have a plan. You should be able to figure out, can I SNL her, or is this going to be a date, right? And if it's going to be a date, right, you just get the line, right? You get the line, and then you excuse yourself and you move on, right? Excuse yourself and move on. If, you know, she has time, you can go bounce for something simple, right? Now, most of the time, I'll just say, let's get a drink, let's come by, right? And this can be alcohol, it can be non-alcohol, that's fine. I like to keep it vague, as with my date invites, kind of vague, so that it doesn't place so much pressure on it, right? The more specific you are, it's like the same thing over here, the specificity of the direct approach. If you say, let's go have, you know, tapioca, she might be like, I fucking hate tapioca, right? And then you're done. Then it just looks weak and weird, and you gotta scramble for something else. If you're like, let's get a drink, and she's like, I don't drink alcohol, you're like, okay, that's fine. I mean, coffee's a drink too, right? That's fine too, right? So then a broader, more simple thing is easier to kind of agree to. Number one, it doesn't seem like you're going to expect all that much if you're just offering a casual invite, right? And at the same time, you know, it can adapt as well, right? And from there, ideally you want to have sort of a plan worked out. Where are you going to hook up with her? Is it going to be your house? Is it going to be karaoke? Is it going to be a net cafe? Is it going to be a hotel, right? Where are you going to actually do the deed, right? From there, you walk it back, right? You could add one venue in between, right? I wouldn't add more than that, but this could be a bar, it could be a cafe, it could even just be the side of the river, which is what I quite like, right? Over here, as you may know, I'm in Osaka right now. If it's in Tokyo, it's the same thing, right? But Riverside, I usually do konbini either before or after this, or both, right? Convenience store, just because, again, if you're doing this a lot, it can add up, right? And if you go to the convenience store, that's it, or one convenience store trip, quick park, have a seat at the park, talk a little bit, then to the hotel, then to the net cafe or whatever. That in the end, it's only going to cost you, well, not that much. This is, you know, 400 yen or something, or up to 400 yen if you're getting both of the drinks, right? So, and that's it. And then you end up at the SNL. If you've got to the day two, you want to work a similar way. You want to start with from the back forward. I'm going to move this over here. You start from the back forward, right? Let's stretch this over a little bit. There we go. So you want to start from the back forward. So your house, hotel, karaoke, figure out where you're going to actually do the deed, right? From there, you work backwards, right? You want to give yourself 1 hour at home, right? Or 1 hour at the escalation location, at least. Then another hour initially, right? And a middle hour. Now these two could be together. These could both be at an izakaya, for example, right? So you meet them, take them to an izakaya for 2 hours, or an hour 45 minutes even, probably even better, right? Transition, bounce them to your house or wherever, and you have 1 hour to escalate, right? So if you're thinking, right, you're meeting them at 7, maybe 8, right? You're meeting them at 7, okay, then you have 3 hours until 10, and nobody's last train is earlier than 10, right? So you should be fine. This gives you a little extra time maybe if you need to. So you know that you need to be bouncing home a little bit before 9. So let's say 8:45, right? 8:45, you got to be bouncing home, right? Having this kind of structure makes sure you do try to make the moves at each stage, right? So if you don't have this, you run the risk of doing, you know, izakaya, then karaoke for just singing, and then, you know, a darts bar, and then, you know, wherever else you might go, game center or whatever, right? The endless day too, right? So try to have work yourself back from the end with the goal in mind, and break it down in kind of chunks so that you know what you need to be doing at each individual occasion. And similarly with dates, like the other chart I made, I do also like to keep it started low and increase it like this, right? And at the same time, the vibing and the cutting deeper is happening, right? This is the emotional scale, and this is sort of like the overall the bond, as you will, right? So a lot of guys, when they meet someone, right, initially when they meet a girl out for a date, when they meet a girl out for a date, they might try to be like, oh hey, it was nice, something like, and try to start the vibe high, right? Well, what happens if you start the vibe high, right? As we've already mentioned, it's really easy to kind of peter it out. And when you need the energy, when you need the vibe to be there, in other words, when you're trying to insert, the vibe is not there because you've already used all this energy and effort and everything, and by comparison, you seem less close than you did at the beginning of the date, right? So if you stop doing this, you're going to have a lot better results. You start low, right? Start low, almost brusque, casual. This also is less pressure for yourself because you don't need to get hyped. You don't need to put on any sort of airs, right? You know that, look, if this is hour 1, right, and hour 2 and hour 3, basically hour 1 I can just fuck around and do whatever, right? I don't need to worry about it. Hour 2 is when I actually get my game face on. I do some cutting deeper, right? Mixing graphs here now, but you do some cutting deeper, you really get to know them, you form that bond, and hour 3 is when you actually escalate, right? So that's kind of how it breaks down. It's much easier to go this way than it is to go this way, right? It's much more stimulating. It makes it easier for you at the beginning. You don't have to worry so much about hyping yourself up artificially to meet some girl, and then ultimately petering out, and then trying to like re-salvage the vibe so that you can escalate, right? It's a lot harder. This is a lot more effort, right? Effort here to hype yourself up, and effort here to change like a dying mood, right? So it's much easier to do it this way. You can come almost like laconic, almost dismissive, right? And end up in a good mood, right? And just know that, yeah, okay, be like, okay, that's fine. It's sort of like a sports team or something, when they're like, okay, it's the 4th quarter, I know it's on, right? And they're all like, they're putting up their 4s, right? 4th quarter, right? So yeah, you can kind of slack a bit in the first quarter, second quarter, right? 3rd and 4th quarter is when you got to bring your A game, essentially, right? And I guess 4th quarter would be, ultimately, I guess it would be escalation, right? 3rd quarter, maybe, still at the izakaya or bar or restaurant, whatever. 4th quarter, escalation, right? So this is really when you need your A game, right? So trying to worry too much about this first little bit is not going to help you in the long run. All right. So there you go. This is kind of the basic time frame, the milestones in the interaction, the amount of time you need to think, you need to put in your mind as what the ideal sort of time frame you should have, whether it's on dates, whether it's on SNLs, your initial approach, what you need to be doing at each stage in the interaction, in order to reduce the leakage at each stage, right? So this, again, going all the way back to the beginning, the mindset stuff will help you make more approaches, right? Thinking of an approach is cheap, it's not a marriage, right? This 30-second stuff that you get into, right? This observation, passage into future agenda, this is going to reduce the amount of girls who are dismissing you, either because you're going direct and getting the rejection too soon, you're going indirect, you're doing bait and switch, you just don't know what to say, you don't know how to express yourself. This gives you that structure so that you're going to have more interactions that get you that 30 seconds, right? Where hopefully she's going to calm down the initial fight or flight response, right? She's super nervous and anxious. She can calm down a bit and actually open up to the conversation, right? Rather than getting blown out when she's super high tension and nervous, like a animal of prey, right? So this will get you a 30-second stage, and then after the 5 minutes, most people can kind of do this because the girl's already kind of accepted their presence. But yeah, if you have trouble with this, shore up that content. Think of the big 5 topics again in the book. But yeah, fashion, family, or rather relationships, fashion, relationships, food, travel, and entertainment, right? And just keep cycling between those, and also cycle between you, right, and her. Right, I'm kind of drawing this very casually, but as you cycle between those topics, cycle between you and her, have the vibing and then the cutting deeper, right? Make sure the energy is starting high and light and fun, and then dipping down once at least before you get the line, right? If you get the line, then cool. This will if you're doing all of these things, this will help you get more dates, right? Which now there's the structure for the date. If she has time, she says, I'm shopping. You're like, cool. Well, you can shop more later or tomorrow or something, or whatever. Let's just go get a drink right now. Let's go get a coffee. Let's go get a chew high. Let's go get whatever, right? Let's go pet my cat, whatever you want to say. Take them for about a 1 hour quick little venue. Maybe this venue, I forgot to mention, maybe about 30 minutes is fine if you're going to do a venue. And then home, right? Home or to the Love Hotel or to the karaoke, whatever it might be. And this should be, again, right, if you're about 5 minutes on the transition here, 30 minutes here, 5 minutes here, that should give you, 20 minutes to escalate, right? And this is, again, this is just to basically insertion. If you want to have crazy tantric hour-long, multiple hour-long, all-night sex, that's fine. But this hour mark is essentially just the bare minimum needed, right, to give you like some escalation going here, right? All right. So that said, if you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat. That is pretty much it was a mouthful. It was a lot of stuff I had to get off my get out there into the world and let you guys know. Did you find this helpful? Was this interesting for you guys? Please drop questions in the chat. Let me know if you're listening, if you heard this. Let me know if you have questions. I will open it up as well. Let's see. Try to find the. Yeah, I mean, there's kind of a lot of stuff there. A lot of stuff to unpack. I was kind of moving through a lot of the stuff quickly, but hopefully it makes sense to you guys. Yes, great lecture. Thank you. We got some Japanese dude in here. Sex, Japanese love. Yeah, man. Yes, all of those things are good. Yep. Cool, guys. All right. Well, I'm gonna leave it at this for now. I will be doing more live stuff in the future. I want to get more. I've been kind of slacking on actual YouTube content, like actual edited videos and all that. So I do want to do more live streams like this. It's a little bit easier to put together. And I'll do like a Q&A one coming up probably next. But yeah, in the future, I will go into more stuff about this funnel, how to increase the funnel. The most important part at the end that I do have to say is that you do need to put enough numbers in this funnel, right? There needs to be, and this kind of, if anything, this is the single biggest problem guys have, is they don't get enough numbers in this funnel, right? So if you're only putting like 3 people in this funnel every week, right? Then like, well, one leaves here and one leaves here and one leaves here, and then you got nothing at the end, right? So you do have to have enough. You do have to put enough actually in the front end of this funnel, and what that means is you do have to approach enough, right? You do have to approach a lot, right? So try to, if you're talking about a day, a week, right? At least 30 approaches a week. I mean, anybody can do that. Nobody's too busy for that, right? Even better, 300 for a month or something like that, right? If you can get up to 300 approaches for a month, you're going to get stuff coming out the back end of this funnel, right? And that, of course, means sex on dates, it means regulars, it means girlfriends, it means everything, right? So make sure you're putting enough into the top end of this funnel, or else you're not going to actually see the rest of it, right? Cool. I had one question. Yeah, fire away, man. Go ahead. Oops. There we go. Now I have something to fall back on when AA happens. Yeah, that's true, man. I mean, this part right here is so stupidly simple that you basically never have anything you need to think about, right? You don't need to think. All you're motivated by is desire. She's interesting. She looks decent. Even maybe she's not even that pretty. Who knows? we'll find out. Again, the marriage approach is cheap, it's not marriage. You can approach, do this 30-second thing, do this 5-minute thing, and then you decide that, yeah, you know what, I'm not into her, right? That's another thing, right? Guys think that they can only approach girls that are 100% their type, right? And while, of course, mostly you should be approaching girls that are your type, at the same time, it's good to just have general curiosity about people, right? And then you can say, you know what, that was a good chat, but you know, I'm not gonna bang this girl, right? I'm not gonna marry this girl, right? So I'm not even gonna get her line. It's fine, like, you know, have a nice day, right? That sort of thing. You mentioned coming in low as opposed to super high in the first 3 to 30 seconds. How does one prevent from being seen as too low value or even sleazy when going in low first? Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, so ultimately, like, the difference is that if you have balls to approach somebody, you're not, like, you automatically, like, they have to, they want to tease out that discrepancy, right? Basically, they're like, well, like, going back to that other kind of diagram I was making with the value thing, right? If you come in low and end up high, right? If you come in low right here, or at least signaling low, right? She's like, wait a minute, that seems weird. There's a discrepancy because everybody else comes in high, right? Trying to be all cool and stuff, right? Because in reality, like what is being cool? It's just being comfortable with yourself, really, right? So she, like, if you're able to just be comfortable with yourself, then she's like, well, that actually is basically high value, right? So, like, being high value is not just like flashing money or like cars or whatever, right? It's like actually just being comfortable with what you're doing, right? And being aware of being confident and calm and able to be yourself in front of her, right? Which is why it's so powerful to do it this way, because she's like, well, wait, like, he's approaching me in the same manner he probably like walks around his house in his pajamas, right? So she's like, damn, this guy, like, he's not trying to pretend to be anything. He just is what he is, and like, take it or leave it, right? Or even sleazy. Yeah, and there is something to be said for like the word charai itself, or I guess you could call it sleazy, although it has like a little bit of a better meaning, I think, in Japanese. The word charai itself does mean super casual, right? Casual and you know, to the point of almost not caring, right? But that's a good thing, actually, right? It's not always bad to be seen as charai. In fact, it can be quite good, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, people might see you as a little bit sleazy, but you can counteract that with this curiosity, right? You do have to, at the end of the day, all of this has to be motivated by actual sincere interest in the girl, right? If you're actually interested in her and trying to figure out about her, like trying to be like, well, why does she do this? Why is she wearing this? Like, why does she make these life choices, right? Here's my life choices. Here's what I did today. Here's what I've been doing. Here's where I'm from, right? What about this girl? What's she about? What's she doing, right? So that actual sincerity has to be there the whole way through, or else, yeah, it does come across as sleazy, right? And it should, right? It makes sense, right? So the sincerity, the honesty of the kind of approach has to be there, right? You do have to be motivated by this desire and curiosity, and then it's not sleazy at all, right? And the same coin, right? You can't think of it every single interaction as, let me see what I can do to get this girl, you know, into bed, right? It does have to be like, well, maybe she's, you know, testing for affinity. That's actually another thing I should put in here somewhere. Testing for affinity is super important. Still can't change the colors. So testing for affinity is basically like all what the approach is about, right? That's it, really. Is especially in this 5-minute. Actually, I'm gonna move over here. That's really what it's about. You're not really sure if you guys are gonna be a match, right? You know, maybe she's not good for you. Maybe you're not good for her, right? So you don't know, but it takes about, you know, 30 seconds to 5 minutes to figure it out, right? So give her that time. Figure out if there's affinity there. Figure out if there's any sort of, you know, any match in your vibe and her vibe and your goals and her goals and all that sort of stuff, right? But you can't do that from before, right? You can't do that from before you've even approached her. People think they can, right? They think they know really what they like or what they want, but for the most part, until you talk to someone, you don't really know. So put enough people in here, put enough people in the front end of the funnel that, yeah, you have enough people coming in that if some people are not your type or you're not their type, that's fine. That's just life. That's romance, right? Testing for affinity, having that curiosity maintains basically the soul of the interaction, so it's not too sleazy, right? What if you do everything and when you start escalating, she says, "Don't touch me or you're too close." Yeah, I mean, probably then the vibe is. I mean, the vibe might just not have been there, right? It's hard to say, right? Like you're asking me a question about a very specific verbal thing they're saying, right? But this, like her objection in each moment, is based on the whole vibe of the interaction. So there's not like, I mean, I think you know this, but there's not going to be one magical phrase that's going to immediately do away with her "don't touch me" or something, right? I mean, obviously, if she says "don't touch you," you can just be like, "Okay, I'm not going to touch you," right? And then just continue talking another 5 minutes, and then try again. And if she's really like against it, then she's really against it, and that's fine. There's nothing, really you can do. Definitely try to make sure to build that connection more before it gets to that level, right? Ultimately, like, yeah, there's going to be girls who are going to resist. You're talking kind of late down here, basically, like at the home, the final stage. There are going to be girls who resist all the way down. That's part of the funnel, right? Is that there's going to be people who fall out of this funnel at every stage down the line, right? So sometimes, yeah, there's going to be resistance, and especially now, right? The society we live in, you got to be careful, right? You got to be careful. You can't push people too hard. You never want to leave girls with a bad experience. So if she, it's hard. It can be hard to tell, right? Because sometimes they might say, "Don't touch me," and they might be serious, or they might say it jokingly, right? It can be really hard to tell. But if you're ever in doubt, like, just live to game another day, right? Don't leave the girl with a bad experience. Don't risk getting locked up, getting put in jail or something like that, because it's not worth it, right? Any response to what does that have to do with me when starting off on the mundane statements? Oh, you mean like if you talk about going to get fuel? I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with her, right? For the most part. And you're talking about this, I assume, this number 2, because number 1 and number 3 both have to do with the girl, right? You're like, oh, this is like a black dress or something, right? And you're like, I was just having coffee with my friends. But what are you doing, right? So you're talking about her and her right here. If she can't wait one sentence for you to talk about yourself, then there's kind of bigger problems, right? I mean, most of the time she's not going to be like, "Wait, stop, this is not relevant," like, she's just kind of like nod and listen and be like, "Oh, really?" Like, she'll humor you for this part, right? And then you get back to her, right? But the reason you want to talk a little bit about yourself is most guys, they tend to focus too much on drilling the girl, on interviewing the girl. And at the end of the interaction, she doesn't have any real sense about who the guy is, right? And yeah, girls like talking about themselves, but they're a lot more comfortable to do so if you share first. So it's that kind of old go there first sort of mantra, right? Go there first, share a little bit about yourself first. She's going to be more likely to want to share about her, right? Yeah. Cool, guys. I'll do more of these in the future. I will probably talk about other different topics, either different points in this interaction or a different topic entirely, and I'll do Q&As as well. Once again, yeah, just go ahead and check out the book if you haven't already. It goes over all this stuff in a fair bit more detail. All right, guys, take it easy. I will see you guys next time. Peace.